Good morning, friends. My name is Marie Hutchison. I have the joy of serving as the creative specialist for the Bishop Bruce O. Innovation Center at United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, and partnering with our director, Reverend Sue Nilsson Kibbe. It is truly an honor of the Innovation Center to team together with the BMCR to bring today's Laity Leadership Institution course to you. Our webinar today is titled Personal Leadership, and our featured speaker is Bishop Cedrick Bridgeforth. As we get started today, let's take a moment to pray. Father God, thank you for the great leadership of Dr. Yvette and Bishop Cedrick and for all of their preparations that have made this webinar possible. Lord, we give our all to you. We open our hearts and our minds and ask for you to pour your power through each of us together as we seek to learn and to listen for your voice and guidance this morning. We thank you and praise your name for all the amazing ways you are working in us and through us. In Jesus' name we pray together, and together we say amen. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Yvette Richards, the BMCR Laity Advocacy Committee Chair. Dr. Yvette, could you please share about the vision of the BMCR and also introduce today's speaker, Bishop Cedrick?
Thank you, Marie. Absolutely. Good morning, everybody, sisters and brothers in Christ. It is indeed a pleasure to be here with you today. I am Dr. Yvette Richards, and I serve proudly as the advocacy chair for Black Methodists for Church Renewal. Many years ago, the reason why this course and these courses have aligned is that we were in Cincinnati at our 50th anniversary, and one of the resonating voices was our clergy saying, Yvette, we have no place or space where our laity can have leadership in the church. Now, let me give you some context. The reason I say that is in many conferences, the lay leader is usually a white individual, or on the district, lay leader are usually white. I have seen some new and innovative districts, conferences making a change. Missouri as of one. So not everybody has an opportunity to attend the training, to equip themselves with the new information, to just better themselves, to understand that God has a calling on their life as laity. So our team created the Lay Leadership Institute. And during my time while I was at United working on my master's and then my doctorate, I met with the president, Kit Millard, and pitched him an idea of how can we partner with United, since they were so receptive and supportive of myself, a layperson. Long story short, he hooked me up with Reverend Sue Kibbe. And from there, it has actually exploded. This is our second year of having the Lay Leadership Institute under the program with the Bruce O. Innovation Center with Marie. And so we've been working very hard to have 4 courses a year that will equip, provide guidance, insight, and information to our laity, especially Black laity that might not have an opportunity to attend their annual conference or meeting in their particular conference or in the district. So this way we can hear firsthand from our leaders in the United Methodist Church that can equip you with information that ranges from social justice, and today it's personal leadership. And we all know that we need that. So I'm excited that on my trip, being on the board of directors for General Board of Global Ministries, I got to see a great friend at the time, Bishop Cedrick. Oh my gosh. After we celebrated him becoming a bishop, because I didn't get to the Western jurisdiction, I sat back and said, God said, that's your next speaker. So I buddied up next to him and said, Cedrick, would you mind, Bishop, being a speaker for our laity? And without hesitation, he said yes. So I am blessed today to introduce you to a leader in the Black church, a leader in the church, a Christian brother, a brother who has led BMCR and the laity with passion, with justice, and with the ever-present help of the Lord. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, my brother, Bishop Cedrick Bridgeforth on personal leadership. Welcome, Bishop.
Thank you, Dr. Yvette. Definitely an honor and a privilege for me to be with you this morning or afternoon or whenever you happen to be engaged or involved, and from whatever place you all may be coming. Grateful to United and the Bishop Bruce O. Center for this invitation and for the support that's offered to ensure that our laity have opportunities to not just learn, but to teach, to engage, to inspire and innovate, to do that collectively and to do that across our connection and in broad spaces. Definitely, as Dr. Yvette said when she asked if I would participate, my answer was yes, it always is when it comes to education in general, but laity specifically, definitely yes. I'm one of those people who have spent my entire life under the umbrella of the church. I mean, I had a few weekends where I cut up, but most of them can be accounted for in service to or an engagement within the church in some way. And now I've lived long enough that my time in the church has actually tilted now, and I have more time in clergy in the clergy ranks than I did in the lay ranks. But I have not forgotten. I still recall my grandparents and my parents growing up, as I was growing up, being deeply involved in the church and not in passive ways. So my example of what church leadership looks like came from lay people who were involved in the administrative work and the programmatic work. And, they led some of those parking lot meetings too. So I know how those go and know that that's where the real decisions get made. And so I count it a privilege to have then, been called into ordained ministry. And upon that happening, I knew right away the first order of business was to, one, endear myself to the laity, but also to ensure that there was a clear understanding that I wasn't in charge of anything except myself, and that was what all of us shared in responsibility, that we were each responsible for ourselves and then for those within our sphere of influence. And as the pastor or as the clergy person, in the relationship, I had a specific role to fill, and that did not give me the privilege, the license, or a mandate to usurp over anyone else's call or space that they need to do the ministry that God has called them to. And that's a foundational understanding that I had in pastoral ministry in the churches that I served. It's an understanding I brought into work in the various extension ministries that I was appointed to as a district superintendent. My district lay leaders were my right, left, back, front. I mean, they were everywhere. If you saw me, you saw my district lay leaders. And now in this role as resident bishop, I have 3 annual conferences, which means I have 3 conference lay leaders that I inherited back in January of 2023. And then there were some elections that happened this year at all 3 annual conferences. And so one of them continues in our Oregon, Idaho conference, Paul Nickel. But he said he had to continue because he came on mid-quadrennium in the middle of the pandemic. And he says, I haven't even seen the church yet. So he wanted a full quadrennium. So Paul continues. But in Alaska, they elected a young adult queer person as our conference lay leader in Alaska. It's the first time we've had someone not retired in anyone's memory in that space in that conference. And then in Pacific Northwest, they elected a young adult Pacific Islander woman as our lay leader, and they are so excited. And I am elated that our conferences had the wisdom to do that because there is much work to do. It is not mine to do alone. My role is to just make sure it gets done. It's not to do it, is to make sure it gets done. And so to have partners right alongside to help move that along makes all the difference in the world. Now, that's my sermon for today. I just need to get that out, just so you know where I am coming from. So if I seem overly excited to be here, that's why, because I feel it's part of my call, and my ministry would be woefully incomplete if I did not step into spaces like this to do what you have graciously invited me to do. And so yeah, so call on me whenever. You just know the answer is yes. We just have to figure out the calendar. That's the issue there. So anyway, I want to let you know that our time today will be interactive. So this is I forget what the language was that Marie and Yvette used about our speaker. Yeah, speaker. So all of us will be speakers. We will all participate today. This is very interactive. It's personal leadership, and so we're gonna do some personal sharing as we build our time together today. And this is ultimately your time. I have an outline here with several resources already prepped to share with you. But if your need and the energy of the moment and the spirit of the space calls for us to go in a particular way, then that's where we'll go. This is your time. I have a whole bunch of stuff set up. I have much more than we would ever need for the time that we have allotted. And so you'll get all those resources anyway. No big deal, no problem. I want you to leave this space today with what you need, and leave this space today inspired to run on, as the old folks used to say, and see what the end's going to be. And as I say that, I'm realizing, this right here is putting me closer to the old folks than I care to recognize sometimes. But yeah, I want us to have what we need so we can just run on and do our part and shape the end to be what we know it needs to be. So with that, I want to shift then to get into our hope today is that we will spend some time talking about personal leadership, and this will be very interactive. And so you will be invited to share your thoughts, your insights, your questions, and we will learn from one another as we go through our time together. And leadership is one of those things that all of us encounter, good, bad, or indifferent, every moment of every day. We encounter it because we are leading others, and we are also leading ourselves. And what I find fascinating is that most of the literature that exists and the research that is accessible is all about leading groups, leading teams, leading organizations. There's very little by way of really intentional efforts of leading ourselves. And as we look around, and we do not have to look very far, we can see that if those of us who are out in the world in leadership spent some time on ourselves, all of what we encounter would be far better than what we experience. Amens are welcome and accepted in this space today. So I take that as I agree or move on, like they mean the same thing. So once we have agreement, I can move on. But anyway, so I have when I started way back in the dark ages in my doctoral program, one of the things I was just fascinated with was this concept of personal leadership, which I had never heard of. I had never heard of it, and I've occupied leadership spaces as far back as I can remember, going all the way back to the third grade. I can see it. I can see it all the way across. But at no point was there ever any explicit conversation or instruction around a body of work or a set of principles that focused on, how do I get myself together so that I can be an effective leader? It all just, I think, is built on an assumption that you come with what you need or you figure it out, and you figure it out as you lead other people. And that, you know, that didn't that didn't really land well for me once my antennas went up. It's like, yeah, this doesn't resonate. This doesn't sound right to me. So, so anyway, so since then, I've just spent my time working on this and trying to help others to think about it in some intentional ways, so that we as we do our work in the church and in the communities that we're called to serve, that we show up with a sense about who we are and what we're bringing to the table. And this is built upon the premise that if we show up with that, we can offer that gift to others. We can inspire others to do that good and hard work. And therefore, and that's a way of us influencing the world around us. This goes back to the flight. You know, whenever you get on the plane, they tell you right away, if it comes to it, if that mask drops down, you put yours on first. Then you will be able to assist other people, right? I mean, so we're told that for a reason, and I think that that metaphor is one that can help us as we do our work today. Now, there are many books, podcasts, articles, magazines, conferences about leadership out in the world. It's everywhere. It is all around us. So there's no limit to the number of resources that you can access if you want to learn about leadership, read about it, hear about it, or improve your skills in some way. And I sit in this space today not as anybody's expert on leadership. I'm the trial by fire, you know, learn as you go, figure it out, and bring other people along kind of approach for me. And I learn with others and learn through experience. And so today will be a time of learning for me, and I hope a time of learning for each of you as well. But as we look at leadership, I want us to start out by just defining it so we have some common grounding as we get into our time. So, some classic definitions of leadership, and I say classic because we will explore some contemporary definitions of leadership, but classic definitions or understanding of leadership, it's about leading groups of people, leading other people. And leadership is also about positions that we hold, usually stated, understood positions within an organization, an institution, or some sort of function that exists. And the problem with this definition is it limits who leaders might be. It gives us a very limited understanding of who leaders might be or where we might find leaders. And when you move into the realm in which we all share, particularly around church, the church world, that has come against us, as again the old folks would say. It's come this sort of thinking about leadership and leaders has worked against us all these many years, because we've relegated leadership to license. We've relegated leadership to ordination. We've relegated it to the chair of or the co-chair of, right? I mean, those are the leaders. And if we're not in one of those roles, then I don't have anything to worry about. I'm not a leader. Well, that's not helping us. It has not helped us, and it will never help us because it's not true. It's just not true. It may have been true for a time. It may have been true in support of a consolidation of power or a bifurcation of this group against that group, or a privilege of a certain type of person over others in a system or a set of understanding or within an organization. But the way the world is being reshaped, and it's been in this reshaping for all of our lives. And I feel that where we are now is this pivot point where it's taken a sharp turn. With the pandemic, I think just got us there a little faster than we would have gotten when we would have gotten there. It was the warp speed that we needed, or that came, whether we needed it or not. It came and moved us far ahead. And so our understandings about things, even as basic and as prevalent as leadership, has to shift. Because if we try to take our old understandings, I won't say our old, our classic understandings into this ever evolving and rapidly changing environment that we find ourselves in, we're going to either be dragged along or left out because our models, our thinking will not be in alignment and will not be useful in this environment that we find ourselves in. Sermon number 3. You have 6 more to go. All right. And none of them are planned, they just come. All right. So let's look at some other definitions around leadership. And I share these with you because they've been with us for a while. And most of the people that we are in ministry with in our church context, especially in the United Methodist context, would have been bathed in these understandings or these definitions of leadership from the business world, because that's where we've taken our leadership cues from through the years. We know Peter Drucker from his management and leadership work through the years. Peter Drucker's definition of leadership is about just someone who has followers. Anybody who has followers is a leader. And that guided a whole school of thought around leadership and management, and even started to create what we now have is this leading continuum where leadership is differentiated from other roles, which we'll deal with later in our time. So let me not get off track right now, which I do so easily, y'all. I do it. But anyway, another leader from the business world, Warren Bennis, which some of you may know of Bennis's leadership work, is the capacity. Leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. We went through this whole period where, even those in the secular or business world, leaned into some of what we would call our biblical or our scriptural understanding of where there's no vision, that people will perish, right? So there was this lifting up of this vision, like that people needed to know where they were going before you really could or should invite them to go anywhere. They needed to know where they were going. And so there was this sense of vision. And so in Bennis's school of thought, leadership was reserved for those who could talk about, paint those word pictures, or inspire people enough to get what the vision is, and then start to put that into practice. So unless you had that skill of articulating and translating a vision in a way that would then transfer into the hearts and minds and motivation of others to then live that out, then you were not, in fact, a leader. Maxwell, which we know from our Christian leadership work, Maxwell would come to mind. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So your ability to influence. And this one came to me as I was putting this presentation together. I remember when I was a part-time student local pastor, and I was working as a youth pastor in Compton, California. First official churchy job. And Reverend Dr. Lydia Waters was my lead pastor. And she had gone off to BMCR and Strengthen the Black Church for the 21st Century had a joint event for pastors, which eventually became the Convocation for Pastors of Black Churches several years later. But when she came back from that first gathering, and we asked her, well, what did you learn, at this gathering? She said, I think the thing that I took away was, and I remember who she reported saying it, but she said the thing that I took away was that as a pastor, the most I have is influence. Like I can't force anybody to do anything. You know, I'm not really lording over anything. Like my best option is influence, to influence the situation, to influence the people, and then the people will make the decision they need to make for themselves. But my job is to influence, and that just turned immediately for me as she shared that, and that's in line with this John Maxwell understanding. To bring it a little, closer to home, now that I'm sitting right here in the outskirts of Seattle. So Bill Gates, definition of leadership as we look ahead in the next century, is him talking about leadership. As we look ahead into the next century, which is the century we're in right now, because he said this before the turn of the century, leaders will be those who empower others. Leaders will be those who empower others. And so these are in chronological order, right? From the time of these four men, four white men, who were leaders in business world, leader in innovations and understandings of the world, people that, those who wanted to know would lean on in order to get some insight. This is where they would go. But even just looking at these four, and there are thousands of others, but if you look at these four, you can see that just over time, their understandings about leadership was shifting, right? So if you go all the way back to Drucker, who, in the 70s, 80s, barely, but mainly 70s, is really at the height of his teaching and publishing, is talking about leadership, and you get all the way down to Bill Gates just before the turn of the century, it's about empowering others, right? And for those of you who've been out in the world for a while, you've probably experienced this shift. And I want to bring us closer to today, into our current times, because one of the individuals or scholars that I'm excited about is Brene Brown, but there's a bridge to even get there. Kevin's piece here on leadership, the way he defines leadership is a process of social influence which maximizes the efforts of others towards the achievement of a goal. So already, just in this definition, it's not about one person, right? It's not about one person. It's about a process. So it's about the enterprise that we're all involved with. So it's not about the person up front. It's about what we're doing together. Like that is the leading effort. That is the leadership, the thing that we're doing, the ways in which we're doing what we're doing is what's leading and guiding us and providing the leadership, if you will. That's the container that's calling us forward. And so again, you can see a shift even from Bill Gates to Kevin Kruse, talking about leadership. It's expanding, right? You can see how it's expanding here. And what Kevin goes on to say about leadership is several things that he points out is that it stems from our social influence. It's not about authority. It's not about power, which connects back to what Dr. Waters picked up at that pastors gathering, that it's about influence. It's about how you use who you are and what you have, and even the moment to influence others and to influence processes, to influence outcomes that you may desire or want. Leadership requires others. It's not just you. So how many people do we know standing up on pulpits, platforms, podiums, proclaiming themselves to be leaders, and we don't see fruit except their voice? Amens, ouches, all of it, right? I mean, so all of it works. But in this world in which we live, if you look at how movements are shape-shifting, like in the moment, leaders spring up all over, movements spring up all over. And if there's a movement, there are leaders involved, right? It may be a voice, it may be an idea, it may be just some goal out there that folks are wanting to achieve together. So this notion of there has to be the manager, the CEO, the president, the whatever, and then everybody else kind of falls in line behind. Well, these new movements, and if you're concerned about connecting with young people, you really need to pay attention to this one. It's not about having direct reports. It's more about peer support, peer accountability, and direct engagement, right? It's not about this hierarchical thing, but how is this flattened and how are we all seen as one around the table, which is what I hear Laity calling out for over and over again. It's like, how can we all just be in the conversation together? Why do we use our offices? Why do we use our titles and our quote unquote callings to differentiate and ultimately divide ourselves, right? So this is a way of thinking about this that may help us in the church as we look at new models of ministry and look at, why are young people, even when they come back, they don't really stick, because we're still doing Drucker and what we're being called to is something else, right? And so we're still trying to do business and what we're being called to is something else, right? So now we'll talk about, leadership traits, but we'll talk about them in terms of what they mean to you personally. But here he talks about that, in terms of this definition of leadership, that it's not about the personality traits or the titles, as we've been saying, but it's about, how they're doing what we're doing, right? The process that's being engaged or brought forward. Yeah. So anyway, let me take you to the last one, the more contemporary one that really has me jazzed right now, and then I'll stop talking for a bit and invite you into the conversation because I said this is going to be conversational. I've just been talking. But I want you to have this grounding here. Brene Brown, which some of you will know Brene's work. She started with this work around vulnerability and shame, and that has just grown. And if you are not familiar with Brene Brown's leadership, just go ahead and just Google her, and anything you happen to land on will bless your soul. I go ahead and promise you. If she had a church, I would go. So I would definitely go. I'd need to pick the choir, but I'd be fine with her preaching to me every week. So here, Brene Brown has this book and this project, Dare to Lead. And in this, she talks about leaders, not leadership in particular, but she talks about leaders, which shape leadership, the process of leading. Says a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and has the courage to develop that potential. We can take up the offering and go home now, right? I mean, if you want a definition of empowerment, engagement, innovation, inclusion, it's all right there. A leader is anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes. Now, I'm going to get on the United Methodist Church. I'm going to get on its neck or its back right now for just a few moments. I think the first part of this, we do fairly well. Of finding potential in people and processes, mainly processes, sometimes people, right? We have our Board of Ordained Ministry process where we identify and assess candidates and license and ordain them. We have our certified lay ministry programs that, have variety of quality across the system. I don't know why we couldn't standardize that like we did Boards of Ordained Ministry, but that's a whole nother thing. I'm gonna leave that alone. But what I want to, even with our lay servant ministers, we have it there. We even have it with our confirmation process with our young people, where we identify the potential. We create a process that helps us identify, but I don't see us doing much more beyond that. So we raise people up and turn them loose. And what Brene is calling for is something beyond that. And that's why this speaks to me so deeply, is that it's not just about finding the potential, but it's about having the courage to develop that potential. You have to develop that potential. That's how you get the outcome that you want and that you need. I mean, that's the missing ingredient right there. It's developing. And the culture that we've been in for most of our lives is it's been one that's based on performance. It's based on how you perform. So you are put in positions or put on a team, and then you're graded by how you perform. But what we did not spend a lot of time on was on the development side. The development side is where you mentor, you coach, you engage with an individual or individuals to ensure that they have what they need to accomplish what you've set out to accomplish together, or what you've set out to accomplish on behalf of the organization, the institution, the committee, the whatever it is. I mean, that's the piece that I have found woefully missing. And I believe if we can latch on to this, right, with full courage and full faithfulness, that we can be better, right? We can be better. We can be more effective and focused on what we've been called to do. So it's about that courage to develop the potential that we see in ourselves and in each other. So let me pause there and see what thoughts are coming up for you, or questions you may have, or wonderings, leanings. How's this resonating? Yeah, let's chop it up. Yes, Dr. Yvette.
This is so amazing because when I was listening to you, I was just like, has Cedrick read my project for my doctorate? Because this is when you talk about the Brown Dare to Lead, you have to have people that see the potential in you. And it was Dr. Rudy Rasmus and Vance P. Ross, who were my mentors. I was trying to I wouldn't say take the easy way out, but doing my project work for my doctorate. And they called me up and said, we're changing your topic to a framework of empowerment of women of color and the United Methodist Church. And they were like, you have to be able to capitalize on all that God has poured into you in the spaces where you have led, to be able to pour into other women. And so I didn't really understand that until after I graduated and after our nominating chair for the Missouri Annual Conference, and then find out what my project was on, and asked me, do you mind if we could tap into your resources of elevated African-American women willing to serve on our conference committees? Now, you know the adage with our church, we can't find any people of color that were willing to serve on the committees. So just to see how you talk about potential and leading that into the work and our responsibility as leaders, or those that have had the opportunity to serve at the levels, that we make sure that we bring other people behind us that might not have had that opportunity. So one of the things as a leader, I think we have to put in there shared responsibilities as a key thing, is that when I have an opportunity, I am looking for the next person that I can share that opportunity with, bring them in to that opportunity. And it's not favoritism, it's that they might not have the space, or their conference or district is not where my conference or district is, but you know they're qualified. You know they're capable, but there's roadblocks in that area. And so I just love how you, the word potential, and for us to be able to share, because that's what my whole paperwork, my whole study was around. And I found that there are many, many, many women that are qualified and capable, but just never have the opportunity and that connection. And so using your networking opportunities and sharing another name, not the same name that you know that will be selected, but other names. But then we have the responsibility to say, give them their resume. I work with them on this. We've done this, because they have not had an opportunity. So I love this dynamic on that. And Janice Elmore is one. She is our South Central Jurisdiction Advocacy Chair. But Janice and I, neighboring states, Missouri was a little more progressive than Kansas was in regards to having her continue to move up. But now she is there going out as the president of United Women in Faith for her conference. But Janice and I served that leadership together for 8 years. And so anytime I had an opportunity, I was just like, from Kansas or Great Plains, Janice Elmore, because she has the foundation. And a lot of times people don't like to share names because you feel that, oh my gosh, if I get that name and she's selected, they're not going to pick me. So we have to get out of that leadership mindset as well. I'm sure you'll talk about the jealousy and the backbiting a little later. But I just wanted to say I enjoyed that, and I'm going to pull up Dare to Lead to see more information. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's when I was in the Air Force, and I went in the Air Force right out of high school. So I all I knew was what my grandmama taught me. That's what I took out into the world, which was wonderful, by the way. But one of the flight supervisors that I had was very intentional. Whenever he would ask you to do something, his expectation was that you would find someone else to do it with you. Even if it was picking up trash on the yard, you go find somebody else to do it with you. Because his thing was, no one person should be the only person who knows how to do anything. And no one person should be the only person willing to do anything at any given time. And that just stuck with me through the years, right? Like, who am I bringing along? And so often, I think we're so starved for attention, starved for recognition, affirmation, all kinds of things, and that when we get called upon, sometimes we're so overwhelmed that finally somebody picked me, we don't think about anybody else, right? We don't think about it. It's like, well, I'm here, and I'll sit here and I'll hold the space, and they'll find somebody else like me or for me. Like, no, that's your job. What if that became your job, right? To influence somebody else and inspire somebody else? Because here's the thing. If the thing that you're doing is not something that anybody else cares to do, that probably means nobody else cares about it. So then why are we doing it? If you are the only person who cares about it, that means you are holding your organization or institution hostage to what you want, right? Because if it's just about you, that's not about the whole. And you may say, well, there's nobody else who wants to do it. Well, then the question is this what God has for us to do right now? Right? Because if God has called us to it, my grounding says that God will provide what we need to get there. And now we do have biblical examples of that, that voice that wasn't in alignment with everybody else. That was the leading voice. Now that's different from I'm just going to hold out and make this go my way because that's going to raise my stature, or that's going to make me feel good, or this is going to show them, all those kinds of things. Those are two totally different things. So as leaders, we have to check ourselves about what's our motive and what's our intent in holding space or pushing for a particular agenda, or how are we using our gift of influence in the moment, right? That's our check. How am I using my gift of influence in this moment? Is it about me, or is it truly about the organization, the institution, the goal, the process, right? Or the others around the table? That's our plumb line that we have to continue to hold down to see how it's lining up. Yeah. Other thoughts? Ideas, reflections?
I hope I stay online here for a minute, but I keeps running through my head the preaching to the preacher, sorry, but Jesus said, having loved them, he loved them until the end. And that is such an important piece of this leadership. It's not just about, can this person, elevate me to the next spot, or how do you develop a leader? You love them. Do, do, do you realize that vision of Jesus looking at his 12 disciples and just loving them? So it's important that that be the grounding. When we love them, then we certainly do look for what are their strengths, how can we help them, who do they need around them, what are their visions, but that's where it starts.
Yeah, if you don't love the people and love the way you're going, that's going to be a hard way to go. It's going to be hard to give your life to it or for it. With the absence of love. Like, why would you, right? Like, why would you? Becomes a question for me. If you continue in daring greatly, I have a video with this, and I'll share that link with you where she talks with Jimmy Fallon about this, but I can just break it down for you to be quicker than me pulling up the video and playing it for you. But she talks about these four things that she learns, or that they learn. It's not she, it's they. So even when she presents her research, though she's the one, her name, Brene Brown's name is on it, but she always uses we, because she works with a team. There's a whole team of researchers. She's the primary investigator, but there's a whole team around her and with her doing this work. And so if you listen to her, you'll hear she's always talking about what we discovered, or what we heard, what we learned. But in Daring to Lead, what she names is there are four things that stood out about leaders in this over a 10-year study that they participated in. One, that leaders have to be, those who are daring to lead, have to be willing to open up and be vulnerable, and be willing to lead from some of their vulnerabilities. The old way was, present strong, present steady and stable, show no weakness, show nothing, that's imperfect about yourself. And that's what a leader is. And you think about those of us who came up under those models, had to hide parts of ourselves, deny things that we knew we weren't good at, but had to go ahead and do them anyway and figure it out. Shoot your best shot as often as you can, and maybe you'll hit the target. But there's this piece about being vulnerable that helps in leadership and helps in our enterprise of leading in this season in a way that it would have been seen as a hindrance before. Again, if you're thinking about young people, you're really going to want to focus on this, because vulnerability speaks to authenticity and helps to build trust along the way, which we'll talk about. The second thing is that what they noted was that leaders have to live in alignment with their values. So that means you have to be clear of what your values are, and you lead and live out of those values, not just on some framework that some other leadership guru gave you, but what are your values? And then how do those show up in the work that you do and the life that you live on a daily basis? The third thing was about trust, about being trusting, and also finding others trustworthy, and living in that balance and continuing to sort of pull on the tension that exists between those. And then the fourth one, which I think is probably the most important, particularly given the time that we live in now, it's the ability to reset when you fail, when you fall, when you get it wrong, when you're misunderstood. Having the ability to reset, to bounce back, to dust yourself off, as some would say, in order to move on. And so I commend that resource to you, the Dare to Lead. There's a podcast. There's all kinds of pieces that are there. The book that will, I think, will bless your soul. Let me take us back to the PowerPoint. we're going to take a break here in a little bit, just so there are two things I want you to do. And then also we've been sitting.
Bishop, before you go any further, Dr. Martha Banks had unmuted. I didn't know if she was trying to share and didn't get a chance to hop in. I wanted her to give a chance to share.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Martha, I saw you unmute. There you go, love.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to just mention that I get concerned about limitations on opportunities to lead. So, for example, one of my heroines, Shirley Chisholm, said tremendous amounts of talent are lost to society simply because that talent wears a skirt. Now, I also think that there are ethnic barriers that are put up before us. And just to bring it home to the United Methodist Church, I'm in East Ohio. I'm a member of General Conference. I'm a delegate to General Conference, but I'm also, of course, a member of my annual conference. And in Ohio, where fewer than 20% of the people statewide ever enter a college classroom, in our annual conference, our members are, of course, mostly white because this is a mostly white state. But the African American members of our annual conference are predominantly women, and I would be hard pressed at this point to name a lay man of color in our annual conference. And among our African American women, almost all of us have earned doctorates in a state where fewer than 20% of the people have any college education. So we wind up with barriers to leadership. And I haven't figured out how to get the church to change this. And we're one of the conferences that had a large percentage of disaffiliations. And that meant that in order to build up our delegation, our jurisdictional delegation, we needed to elect some additional people. And we elected 2 additional lay people who we elected 6, but we elected 2 African American women, both of whom have doctorates. So I want to figure out a way that we as a church can stop setting barriers to who can be in leadership, because it may be about wearing a skirt, it may be about the color of our skin, it may be both, and it may be piling on some additional requirements that are not required of everybody. And with that, I'll mute.
Bishop Cedrick, you are on mute, but Dr. Martha, I'm going to call you because that is what we went through here in Missouri. And I think it took, and I'm not saying this for myself, but I think it took me challenging our mission council, that I have been on the mission council at that time for 6 years, and I am the only Black female laity. And it makes it hard for us to make sure we attend, number one, every event, because if you miss one, the first thing they're going to say is not committed. And I say that from experience. At my very first mission council meeting, the white pastor, who is now disaffiliated, who sat across from me, said, "Will you attend the meetings?" And I was like, "What do you mean, will I attend the meetings?" I don't, I knew what he was saying, but I wanted him to say it. And so he said, "Well, the last Black person we had did not always attend." And so I had to go into my Jesus space to say, yes, I will attend. But the more that I sat in those meetings for 4 years with him, once he left, I shared with the council how infuriating it was and how disrespectful it was, and how he made me feel not valued because of one Black person's incident. I said, what if I assumed you all wore sheets and hoods and were the Klan? They were like, well, you know what, Yvette? We never thought of it. And so I don't think people consciously, Dr. Martha, think that, but we have to be willing to step up. So I stepped up and said, how can I help us get better? And then that's when the conversation came about with the director over connectional ministries and the nomination on how can we utilize a platform that's already out there. These 8 women that Yvette knows are a part of her doctoral project. And now out of the 8, 4 of them are part of the council. One is now the new lay leader. So sometimes, Dr. Martha, it's not our job, but we're going to have to, step up and say, here, let me help you, even though you don't ask. Unfortunately, even though we know we only make up 8% of the entire denomination, but our voices are valued and are not heard. So I see this as another learning session, and maybe we can talk and see how we can do a roundtable around that. So I'll let the expert Bishop Cedrick jump in here and share.
Yeah, not an expert, not an expert. I'm probably better at calling things out. Like just call it how I see it. But yeah, I think some intentional, particularly from the advocacy angle, spending some time of talking about, how do we, invite and engage, locate, those who are, capable and willing, right, of serving. And so I think every annual conference I've worked with in any variety has named, the need to identify newer, new leaders, new voices, right? But that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I think in just given the context of this conversation, from an African American or Black perspective, what does that mean? When you're probably not in a super large and overly resourced church, the people who are going to rise to the top of anyone's mind or knowledge is probably the person who's already carrying that local church, already carrying the lion's share of leadership in that local church. So then how do we get them to district and conference and jurisdictional and general church functions without hindering our locus of support, which is our local church, right? So, how do we do that? Even as a district superintendent and thinking about selecting new district lay leaders, it's like, well, if I pick this person, I know what they're doing in their local church. Do they have someone lined up? And when the answer was no, then that was not the district lay leader, because I already knew that person had not exercised, the process of bringing others along. So you can't be the district lay leader. So you're great in your local church and doing what you're doing. But later, I reflected on that when I went to my next district and had to start thinking about associate lay leaders, working with our district lay leader and identifying associate lay leaders. It was this performance development piece that got in the way. I was looking for those who were already performing, right? Like, what are they already performing? And judging the system that they were in for not developing people. And I had to step back from that thing and say, maybe my call in this is the development side of it, right? Is investing and engaging in the development side of it. So how are we raising up that next round of leaders, those next 2 or 3 rounds of leaders? What do we have in place that helps people explore their call and creates safe space for them to explore, to do a little something to see if it resonates with them, as opposed to doing it the church way of you get the job and it's your job until you die, or we strip it out of your cold dead hands, right? I mean, so So how do we create space for people to explore what it means to serve the church, right? So I had to have a come to Jesus moment myself, like in my own selection of leaders. And so maybe some conversation about that, Dr. Yvette, about how we reframe the invitation and create the space for the development so that we can have the performance, if you will, that we want and we need in order to move the whole ahead. I could definitely see value in that. So let me take us back. I want to do two things, and then I'm going to give you some work to do and our break. Just to finish up the Brene Brown thing, I could definitely go on the road and be her hype man, as you can probably see. But she draws the distinction here between armored leadership and daring leadership. And, I think the call, the charge, the need in this season is the daring leadership of being a learner, not the one who knows it all, and being the one who's focused on getting it right as opposed to being right, right? Getting it right means you're willing to fail. You're willing to fail. And that's okay if you're willing to fail, because one of those markers of daring leaders is that you appreciate and understand the process of reset, right? So you get knocked down, okay, assess where you are, reset, keep going. We don't stop just because we failed. We learn because we failed, and we keep going and we keep getting it right. And right moves and shifts over time. Right is not static, right? Right is dynamic, and it's okay to be in that dynamic space. See? So I'm going to put a couple links here in the chat. There will be two of them. And these are two assessments. One is a leadership style assessment, and the other one is a conflict style assessment. I do not own the rights to them. They're just on the internet. They're free. That's why I use them. And I use them all over the place all the time in settings like this because they're quick, they're easy. There are books about leadership style assessments and conflict style assessments. They are all over the place at your local bookstores. There are all kinds of websites where you can do this. These are just quick, easy, and free. And so each one takes like maybe 5 to 7 minutes to do. So I want to invite you to do these. I want to make sure you can access them though, but I want to invite you to do these. And when you do them, they give you an instant result. And so just when you do it, just leave your screen open or screenshot it or write down what your response was. So like on the leadership styles, it says you're a laissez-faire leader. Just write that down, just because we'll need it for the next set of exercises as we unpack these. And the same for the conflict styles. You may get multiple on that one. I always do. So I'm in conflict with myself, I guess. I don't know. But write that down or screenshot it, or just leave that screen open so you'll be able to feed that into our conversation when we come back. So if you will, what I want to invite us to do is to do each of the assessments, keep your response. All right. So I want you to get up, move around, refresh your lattes or whatever it is that you are involved with that keep you going. So I want you to do those two assessments. Keep your responses, because you are going to need those. You've probably done these kinds of things before. So and they're basically, you just, like on the conflict one, it gives you two options. You just pick the one that speaks most to you in the moment, right? It's not a right or wrong. It's just what's right now. That's what we're going for right now. And on the leadership one, it gives you like 4 options on each choice, and you pick the one that resonates right now. And there's no right or wrong. This is not testing if you're a good leader or a bad leader. It's just helping identify your primary leadership style based on the responses you offered today. If you do it tomorrow, it may shift a little. So there's no good, bad, right or wrong. It just is. And so be okay with that. Like, be okay with that.
Well, as we gather back in, did everybody get a chance to do the 2 assessments on conflict assessment and leadership style? Okay, a thumbs up in regards to that. That was very interesting. I have used those, seen those 4 leadership styles, and I go between 1 or 2, the democratic or the transformational one. Today, I guess I was in a democratic space today. What about you, Dr. Martha? What was yours?
I was Democratic leader, and do you want the other one, the conflict also?
Okay, you can share. Yes, go with
Okay. So for the conflict, I was 91% compromiser and 73% problem solver.
Wow, excellent. That was great. Marie?
I am finishing up my leadership assessment
Okay.
as we speak.
All righty. Janice or Deborah, did you have a chance to complete the assessment? Don't know if Janice or Deborah is back. Well, in looking at the different basic leadership styles, I think Dr. Martha and I are in between the democratic and the transformational one listed. Now on the conflict, and I'm sure mine was an avoider and a compromiser. And I was laughing when I read one of the weaknesses of the avoider. Avoider sometimes keeps their feelings bottled up and then aren't able to meet their own needs. This can result into a frustrating buildup of emotions. And when I think of that, I think of when I did this assessment, I think I had in my mind of when I served the first 4 years on the Mission Council, because I was just sitting back listening versus trying to address any conflict. And I'm sure if I was to take it and think of the mindset of the Mission Council now, or on a Mission Council or on a board where you feel that you're valued, and a board where you feel that your thought processes are received, I'm sure I would get a different result. Dr. Martha, can you share what yours was again, and what mindset were you in when you took this test?
Okay, for the conflict, 91% compromiser, 73% problem solver. I'm a retired psychologist, and I've been a leader in psychology, and I have written on feminist leadership. So, so this fits in with my research, with what I have experienced in a variety of settings. And I grew up in a family where just about everything was on the table. And so I have never been an avoider. People sometimes talk about me as somebody who thinks outside of the box. And I just respond to them, if you've never really been allowed into the box, the only way you can think is outside of the box. So
I love that. I love that.
That's where my leadership That's how my leadership is framed.
Yes, in regards to that. Awesome. Janice or Deborah, are you back on and can share your leadership style or your conflict assessment if you're able? Okay, Marie, did you complete either one of them? Are you able to share either one?
I did. The leadership style for me was the transformational leader. So I don't know if anyone else got that one. It suggests that my primary leadership style is transformational, vision focused, helps motivate their team by setting clear goals and expectations, and everyone is working toward a shared vision. Transformational leaders are highly invested in the individuals they manage and may adapt their style to accommodate different people's needs. Keeping an open mind is essential to this leadership style.
One of the things I love that where you said transformational leaders remain open-minded and are willing to change their management style as needed. And then I borderline on that, but the one that I love in regards to the Democratic leader leads by example and persuasion, not by force. And so oftentimes leaders, you can hear people say, do it because I say so, or do it because that's the way I've done it. And that right there just, to me, turns people off in regards to want to participate, wanting to engage, and with a transformational leader, being open-minded. And so I think in now day and age, when we are in ministry and wanting more people to respond to the call of helping, engaging, and volunteering to move the ministry forward, you have to be open-minded. You cannot do this by force. A lot of times that's why I think people don't come back. Was like, and you hear this, I don't hear it as much, but we've always done it that way. I can remember early on in the church, well, with United Methodist Women back then, this is how we always done it. And I'm like, well, no, we're going to change a little. We're going to do it a little differently. And so I think being out of that mindset allows us to have more individuals that are willing to step up and then let them have an opportunity to make mistakes or I wouldn't say it's even mistakes. Let them understand that even though, like when Bishop Cedrick said earlier, you might fall down, but you get back up. It might not work if you try it that way. But if you have somebody else to do it that has that passion, that commitment, and that drive, it can be successful. And I see that now, right now, we're doing Women's Day for United Women in Faith. And we have two very young leaders that are in their mid-30s. And so many of our ladies are 55 and older in their 60s, 70, very active, but have done Women's Day this way. So we're doing something different. And the videos, the marketing is totally different. Then we would give a flyer out or put it in the bulletin, announce it. And they're like, well, let's do little video clips now. And so getting our older seasoned women involved in that, they're learning something new. So it's just being that open-mindedness, which I think is great. And on your conflict?
Working on that one.
Working on that one. Okay. All righty. So there's Janice back. Janice, can you share?
Yes. My leadership style, I'm democratic. I listen to ideals and don't subscribe to an ideal of centralized power. And my conflict style assessment is 82% compromiser and 73% problem solver. Do you want more, or you want me to go into
yes, if you can share a little more in regards to what it says in regards to the compromiser.
Okay. Compromisers approach conflict with the goal of compromise. They tend to think about what they are willing to give up and what they are willing to hold on to and try to gear communications to focus on this give and take for all parties. It is a good way to promote cooperation. It can be done fairly quickly when both parties are engaged.
And your other one was?
Problem solvers tend to want to discuss all the details of a problem and work through it together so that everyone gets what he or she wants and is happy in the end. Their strengths are that they tend to welcome differences, build high levels of trust and mutual understanding in relationships. This is also the potential to learn from creative problem solving. Weaknesses: when time is a factor, it is difficult to spend the energy and time needed to process the way problem solvers tend to. There is always the potential for burnout from overprocessing. Ooh.
Yeah, yes, that burnout is key in leadership. Sometimes you're the one that's always tagged to represent or always tagged to be a part of the process or be a part of have a seat at the table, or what is your ideas. And so I think that's where it comes in when you're overtasked, when you are the only one that they call on, all the time. So that's a good way for us to learn a good balance. And I know when we talked about leadership, one of the things that I did last year for our laity, I did 2 classes on the late Junius Dotson Soul Reset book. And it was very eye-opening, because sometimes when you talk about compromise and avoider, problem solver, we tend to put a lot of weight on our shoulders as leaders. And so we sometimes have to realize how we need to step back and make sure that we are taken care of. And a few people that, took the class, when you start going through it, did not realize how much we put on our plate when we're trying to not only achieve the goals that God has set for us, but in our roles in leadership. So if you are the leader, whether it's the bishop or Marie, you with the Innovation Center, I know Dr. Martha, being a general board, a delegate, all that reading and preparing for general conference, and then preparing for your own conference. And I know Janice being the president of the United Women in Faith for the Great Plains Conference. That's the whole state of Kansas and Nebraska. So doing those duties and responsibilities. And Deborah said she's from North Carolina, my birth state. So we all have things that, that we're doing as leaders, but then it gets into them. How do we prioritize that we're making sure our soul is reset? And that's what I loved about the book that Dr. Junius, the late Dr. Junius, wrote in regards to, do we really as leaders take care of ourselves? Personal leadership, we have roles and responsibilities, but that's why it's important for us to start looking for individuals. I wouldn't say to take our place, but to share and bring on, so they can see the beauty that God has for other people, and share those experiences so they can understand there's many ways to serve in the church and laity, many ways to share in the church and laity. And so as we wait for Bishop Cedrick to come back, one of the ways I know and that share is being willing to share outside of your church and outside of your conference. I was blessed to serve on the General Board of Global Ministries twice, filling in a spot for a person. And so when you serve on these national agencies, you get to see the church at a different level, and you see how personal leadership styles, because when you're sitting at the table where people from all over the world, you have different leadership styles. And one of the things I learned is culture, the cultural style of individuals from different cultures in regards to the respect, who can serve, who's able to serve. And so you tend to have to adjust your leadership style in understanding, first of all, to be respectful, but also that's a learning opportunity. And I think as leaders, especially as women, that's where we take the opportunity to be able to step up and share some of the positive opportunities that we have seen in the United Methodist Church and United Methodist Women, United Women in Faith, where we elevate leaders, we equip leaders in order to serve in these different roles. Marie, as a part of the Bruce O. Innovation Center, how has your opportunity been able to serve as with your personal leadership style?
Well, I'm looking at this and I just also completed the conflict, and we're always learning about ourselves. But as I look at this, and being a transformational leader, I can definitely see that in myself. I didn't read part of this where it says you lead from a transformational approach. It's important to consistently improve your self-awareness. Transformational leaders believe that everyone should be learning and investing in self-improvement, and that means you. I think part of transformational leadership also is being a team player and having, a healthy level and a healthy sense of humility. And I think that that's part of what plays into transformational leadership. For me, I actually had not taken this particular assessment, so this is very insightful for me, and I can definitely see that in myself. I did complete the conflict assessment, which again is insightful. I'm a 100% compromiser and 73% problem solver. And I actually would have thought that those might have been switched, because I don't always feel like I'm complimenting or compromising, in various situations, as much as I must be on some level, because this says 100% compromiser. So, but I'm definitely, I think with my style, I'm a focused person. And so when there are problems, I'm pretty motivated to work those out quickly. And I don't know how the assessment went for others, but I was being asked the same questions more than once. And I think the assessment is probably designed to really fine tune and have you truly affirm that you are answering the way that you would, handle a situation. So, and that probably increases the accuracy of it. But looking at that as a compromiser and problem solver, again, very insightful. I really like these assessments.
Well, you know what? I will say the 100%, because for those that don't know, Marie and I work very closely in terms of getting our Lay Leadership Institute up and running. And she has been very patient in terms of getting the dates, getting the information when you're working and trying to get other individuals. And so she's like, okay, well, let's try this way. Or, okay, well, give me information by Thursday. And so I'll say on Thursday, this is what I have. Well, let's move forward with this. It's never anything in a negative. So I greatly appreciate that. Well, look, our bishop is back. So we held it down for a little bit, Bishop. And so we have gone over, and you might do this, what our conflict and our leadership style. We discussed that in a little bit of how it was done. So I'm turning it back over to you, Bishop Cedrick.
Thank you so much. It's a crazy day over here. But it's all well. All is well. Just self-leadership, right? It's like self-leadership, like bring it in and make it happen. So, but thank you for the team being team together. So anyway, I hopefully you well, sounds like you did. You got the assessments done, and we'll come back to those. I want to take us to a piece here. There we go. To just kind of open up a little bit, because all of us got to where we are because we were influenced by someone or something or some things, right? That got us to where we are in our various places of leadership. And then we are also influencers, like we are now we are influencing others. So we have always been, not just now, but we are always influencing others. Case in point, back the middle of last year, I received a email from a cousin, a distant cousin that I'd grown up with. They lived across I say street now because I live in the city, the road. They live across the road, down the road from us in our family compound. And I have to say that George was my first hero. Like he was the first person that I remember just idolizing. He spoke. Now he's like 6 years older than me. But even as a teenager, there was something about him that just stood out to me. The way he spoke to the adults, the way the adults responded to him, all the accolades he received in school. And my mom would even say, instead of following this knucklehead over here, you need to pay attention to George and what he's doing. They called him little boy. So she would have said little boy, and that man's 60 some years old and they still call him little boy. When you're in the country and you get a nickname, it's yours. And so, but I received this email from him saying, I just came across a news article about your election. And then I Googled you and I listened to your sermon at your installation. And I have to say, I am in awe of you. Please call me. Now, I have not talked to George in over 20 years. Like we just lost touch through the years. And so he came across something and that's how we reconnected. And in our reconnection was able to share with him my experience of him as a young child and growing up. And even though we had been separated, there were things about him that I still held to that informed and influenced me even today. So I was able to say to him, some of what you saw and some of what you see and what you hear, it's you, right? So it's being reflected back. So we are always influencing others and being influenced by others intentionally and unintentionally. So it's important to know the source of what's in us so that we know kind of how it's flowing out into the world. So I want us to spend a little bit of time on this. A couple of these questions are actually a part of the leadership genealogies piece. And this is a new piece that I'm working on. It's being revealed here for the first time. But working on this, but I want us to use this as a talkback time here. The first part of it is to imagine that you could invite three people to dinner. And these are three people who have influenced you the most. And they could be past or present. They could be fictional. They could be historic figures. But who has influenced you the most? Who would those two or three people be? So think about those people. And you might want to jot them down because you may be blocked for a moment, but then they'll start to flow. But who are those people? Okay. You have your people? I have to write mine down because they change depending on where I'm sitting or what I'm focused on in the season. Okay. Dr. Martha, you have yours?
The first one is my grandmother. I was very fortunate. I grew up with three parents, my mother, my father, and my paternal grandmother. And she was a listener. And so I continue to be a listener, much in the same way that she was. The second person was she's no longer, she's retired, long retired now, but she was the dean of the faculty at the first college where I taught. And when I applied for the job and I gave my first guest lecture at the college, after I did that, she asked if I had a few more minutes to talk. And the two of us literally sat on a table across the hall from what would eventually be my office. And she just talked about the difficulties I would face if I took the job. And this was older sister to younger sister, and it was wonderful. The third person was a woman who preceded me by several years as a president of the Society for Psychology of Women, who was just a most compassionate leader. She went on to be a president of the American Psychological Association. She was the first Latina to do so, and she she listened to people. She invited people into leadership, and and always listened, and you always knew that she heard you. So those are the three people, and they would love to get together, and I think they would all love my food.
Love it, love it, love it. Now, so let me we'll use you, Dr. Martha, then to demonstrate for the rest of the class if you're okay with that.
Sure.
So what I heard you name for those that have influenced you is that they were listeners, that they offered honesty and real talk, and they were discerning and invitational.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
And where do those things show up in you?
Well, as I said, I'm a psychologist, so I've spent a lot of time listening, and trying to discern in order to empower others. I always see that as my main goal, is that I am in a position to empower other people.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. And so where this is kind of shaping out for me is like really goes back to childhood, because I too had my grandmother as a part of my maternal grandmother as part of my parental circle. Was you got to mind the company you keep. Right now, when you're 7 or 8, this old lady don't know nothing about what she's talking about. But now that I'm way past 7 or 8, I do understand that she knew what she was talking about, because we are influenced by those in our circle, even if it's people we don't know intimately, right? Sometimes it's public figures that influence us. It may be a book that we read, or even a character in a book. I remember when I read Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man when I was in college. I was influenced by that main character, because of the way he had to move through the world. That resonated with me, and it influenced the way I thought about myself and the way I saw myself in the world, which means it impacted what I said, what I did, how I walked, and how I engaged in the broader world. And so paying attention to those who influence us, and really teasing out what is it about them, right? So what is it about them that causes them to stand out to me? And what I'm finding fun in doing this with individuals and groups is that oftentimes it's those things that we saw in others that's showing up in our leadership. Good, bad, and indifferent, right? I mean, this works out across the spectrum. Some of what we were influenced by wasn't the greatest, and you can get at some of that in the leadership genealogies part down here at the bottom of what you learned and what you had to unlearn, right? So good, bad, or indifferent. Like, how is that impacting my leadership now, right? Or where is that showing up in my leadership now? So it's just part of your personal inventory, right? It's part of your personal inventory, and taking stock of who you are, where you are, and how you're leading in the world. So as the others of you think about yours, think about the three people you admire most. Can you see where some of those qualities or characteristics or attributes show up in your leadership. Yay, I may have a research project. All right, Dr. Yvette, get ready. We're going. I've been testing this out, and it's like there's something here, there's something here, right? So just think, but not just in, I want us to think about this in terms of not just what we've received, but think about it in terms of then what you are putting out. Because those that you've named, those that you wrote down, and those that you've been thinking about, and you named, probably wasn't sitting around thinking about, let me see how I'm influencing Yvette today, or let me see how I'm influencing Marie today. Let me see how I'm influencing Cedrick today. Like they're just living their lives, doing what they do, right? And we picked it up and we raised them up or raised it up, however we did, and we moved on with our lives. And the same is happening to you. Someone is seeing you, hearing you, looking at you, and they're saying, wow. Or oh, and they're taking that and they're moving on with their lives, right? So that's part of the self-leadership piece, is just being aware of what we're projecting out into the world, because we don't get to decide how people see it, how they view it, and how they appropriate it for themselves, right? So we just have to pay attention to that. Yes, Dr. Yvette.
I was sitting here listening to Dr. Martha, and I was thinking, because I ping pong several people, but when it got down to it, who have influenced you the most? And then it came to my mind, the three people that I have tried to follow and pull bits and pieces out of their lives that have been so profound for me. My two grandmothers and my mother. And I was just like, why am I going anywhere else? Because my sister and I always have a conversation, and was like, we learned that at home. We got that from our mother. When people will say, Yvette, that facial expression, and Bonnie says, I have told you, you got that from the house. That's, those are things that make you who you are. And sometimes in leadership, you think you have to change in order to be accepted. And what I learned from those three women is always be who you are. Point blank, period. In a discussion, roll tape, this movie is over, roll credits. Do not change to fit in. Be yourself, be authentic. And then your leadership style will be more received and receptive, because it's not like you're putting on airs. You're just being who you are.
That's the authenticity piece, right? That's the authenticity piece. And that's all of it, right? That's the good, the bad, because then people can, leadership is hard for people to imagine and difficult for people to claim, because of the images that we have put forth, and this idea that in order to be a leader, you need to be perfect. You need to have all the answers. You need to have it all figured out, or you have to be domineering, and all these kinds of things. And that may have been true in a season, or purported to be true in a season. But where we are now is we cannot live that lie. We cannot live that lie. Our children, our grandchildren, those generations, they see right through it. They're not dealing with it. And that's why they ain't coming to your church, because they see you at home one way, and they see you over there at the church being a whole nother person that they do not yet recognize.
And not only coming to your church, they're not willing to volunteer. They're not willing to serve on a committee from a lay perspective when you're asking people to serve. And so when I'm thinking about this, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I am my mother. And I just started laughing. She had me at 40, but my mother was the most honest person. If you, even her children, she's going to tell you the truth. And I think that's where we've gotten away from how children or people in society, we want to sugarcoat it and put sprinkles on it so they'll feel better about themselves, versus saying, no, that's not going to work. And I think the honesty that she's put in my life has allowed me to go down the right path, versus trying to do my own thing, but being led by God.
Right. And if you are a quiet leader, then if you if you are a quiet leader, then other quiet leaders will see that there's a place for me. If you are a kind of in your face, it is what it is kind of leader, then the in your face, it is what it is, people will see there's a place for me. I mean, so that's why it's important for us to show up as ourselves, not as this manufactured thing, because then you're showing up as someone else. You're showing up as someone else, and you are creating space for other manufactured people to show up. And we wonder why things are a mess. And we wonder why we can't get anywhere. And we wonder why we can't, move an agenda, because half the table is made up.
Yes, they are afraid to let the mask down. And I learned that because I have dyslexia. And people are like, how can you have dyslexia? That you do Dyslexia is not about speaking. It's about reading and the words. I said my parents learned that area early on and would have me use a recorder to do my reports. And I started sharing that because a lot of times I could see people moving to the back or not wanting to engage or participate. And they were like, well, I don't read well. I said, sometimes I don't either. I said, so that's why I get my material early. If words don't look right, I put the phonetics. Dr. Kinney, thank you, God rest her soul, in regards taking, phonetics. I said, but sometimes we build up what leaders are supposed to be and portray them, that we have now blocked off individuals who could be great leaders, but they're afraid because they're going to be judged by what the per se leadership person is supposed to look like and is supposed to be.
Yeah, definitely. Deborah, were you trying to get into this conversation? I just saw you go in and come out, so I just wanted to acknowledge. If not, it's fine. I just wanted to check that. Okay. All right. Well, let's hold that. I mean, that's just something for you to keep thinking about, right? Something for you to just keep thinking about how you are influenced and how you are influencing others, because you do not get to decide who you influence, or well, actually you do, but you don't know how they're receiving what you're putting out. Let me say it that way. So, all right. So I want to take us to the leadership styles. You'll hear me use alignment and congruent over and over again, because that's just how I believe we have to do it. There needs to be some alignment between our leadership style, the way we deal with conflict, how we influence the world, how we talk about ourselves. All those things need to find themselves in alignment so that we can be whole. So each of you did your leadership style assessment, and the one you did lands in 4 essential leadership styles. Now, depending on which school of leadership you were trained in, or that you Monday morning quarterback in, you'll get anywhere from 2 up to about 16 or 18 leadership styles, depending on the instrument and depending on the school of thought that you're working in. I'm a Goldman person. That's what I was trained in. That's my orientation. So I am totally projecting it onto you, and totally biased opinion here. I feel like it's the best middle of the road thing that we can just access and do our work. And you already had some general discussion about your types, your styles rather, not types, your leadership styles. Now, I'm a democratic leader. Now, I've probably taken this sort of instruments 150 times, who knows, but it's been a lot through the years. Every leadership conference you go to or class you take, there's an assessment, and mine will always land in the democratic, whatever the name they're using for what describes a democratic leader. That's me. Were there any other democratic leaders in our group? Yeah. United Methodists tend to fall in there. So, which, there may be something to learn there. Not sure. Hold on. Here we go.
I'm going to insert that when you said that, That is so true because I serve on the World Methodist Council and the United Methodists. When we are in our committee, we sort of have that use with the Democratic style for nominating, and the person, my co-chair, totally different. And so it was funny at our first meeting in Sweden because they were like, Yvette, what's going on here? And my person from Chicago, United Methodist, she just looked at me. She's like, okay, we get ready to see the Yvette come out. And I was like, yep, I said, I'm going to use the United Methodist style. I said, I'm going to use the UMW style, first of all. That's what I said, to be honest, because it's right and in order. You cannot make up stuff on the fly when you get to a meeting. And so some of them were like, no, we're going to do it this way. And I said, well, no, we're not going to be authoritative. They're like, no, finger on the table. And I was like, well, let's, take a break and everybody come back together so we can see how we're going to work this out. But definitely we are Democratic, a little transformative, but I would say mainly Democratic because we are open-minded. But when we get to the point that we're ready to have a solution, we need to move forward, not by force, but by consensus.
Yeah, definitely lands in there. And let's see, let me go back a little bit here. What I need. Sorry, everything's jumping around on my screen. All right, there it is. There it is. Yeah, so the thing that I want to point out is, and I said this before the break, that there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad, it just is, right? And this is just an instrument to help give you some language or some hooks upon which to hang this. And again, there are many, there's a lot of literature out there, and you can go as deep as you care to in this. And I just want to walk us through some situations here just to kind of debunk the good, bad, of all these styles. So in the coercive, those tend to be the ones that are, just, I'm gonna tell you, that would have been my mama most days. I'm gonna tell you what you're gonna, and, sometimes you need that, if you're in a situation where you have a bully. You know what a bully looks like in church, I'm gonna take my money and I'm gonna leave, or I've always chaired this event, and if I don't chair it, nobody will, that kind of thing. You need a coercive leadership style to deal with that. The Democratic style is going to keep that thing going. That's how you got there over the last 50 years, because that just keeps it going. So sometimes you need the coercive leadership space. Now, is it good when you're trying to ideate and create a bunch of space for people to dream and think? No. This is the last style you want guiding the session when you're trying to open up space. Same with authoritative. Now it's visionary, like it's going to point your eyes to 20 years down the road, right? Like this is what this can be. Like military generals would be these types of people. CEOs of multinational corporations would be these types of people. So they're functioning at a very high level. They're going to be able to tell you what this can look like way out there, but being involved in the day-to-day, don't look for them. In fact, they're the last people you want to be there, right? Because they can't be in the here and the now as readily as some other styles might allow for. But this is a person that you would want as your stewardship chair. This is a person that you would want as your even as your SPRC chair sometimes, especially if you're doing a staff overhaul or a realignment of your organization. This is the type of person you want because they're going to be able to look way down the road and help you see some possibilities and be able to articulate that. So the affiliative leadership style, want everybody to be happy. This is not about everybody being included, but this is wanting everybody to feel good about what we're doing. And want to make sure everybody's talking and everybody is getting along. Not so much focused on the agenda or actionable outcomes, but really just want to make sure that the atmosphere is set right. Now, if it's the ushers meeting, this is wonderful. If it's the finance meeting, not wonderful, right? If you have a children's ministry council where you're bringing the parents together to talk about vacation Bible school or the summer day camp or that sort of thing, yeah, this person could be great because they're going to create welcome, warmth. They're going to make sure everybody's included. There's going to be a lot of space created in there. It's also going to create space for other leaders to rise because this person is not going to appear to be leading. Oftentimes, they're not going to appear to be leading. Folks who fall in this category will often refer to themselves as the facilitator or the convener. They will seldom claim, "I'm the chair, I'm the president, I'm the lead." They're gonna struggle to name that in a clear way. All right, and these are broad brushstrokes that I'm using here, right? To broad. I trust y'all to receive that. And then the holy grail of this group, the Democratic leadership style. We're participative. We want people to participate, like Dr. Yvette earlier. I saw Dr. Martha unmute herself. We need to hear from her. That was the Democratic leadership style at work right here in this session today. Even with me texting Dr. Yvette saying, "Hey, I'm gonna need a few minutes." Like that's like we can come into this together. Now some of that was affiliative too, right? Some of that of let me pull in somebody else to kind of go with this, right? And you'll get this PowerPoint too. So you don't have to worry about taking copious notes off of the screen with this, but there's value in every member, what they have to put forward, but we have to know that you can't rush a democratic process. Like you cannot rush a democratic process. You have to create it. It creates its own time. I mean, we've all been in that meeting where it started at 7. We did our prayer and check-in, and then we started the conversation, and the meeting's supposed to end at 8. It's 7:50. We're still talking about how we feel and what we think and what we tried and what the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And then somebody says, "Can we just make a decision?" And everybody looks at that person like, "You mean, despicable person. Why would you say that?" We're all still talking about what, I mean, we've all been in that meeting. Or the leader suddenly says, "Okay, y'all, we got to stop the discussion and now we have to decide." That feels the way it feels to the Democratic leader because that is anti-democratic in our minds, right? In our body. We feel it in our bodies. That, wait a minute, you just shut me down. And we react and we respond to that because the democratic process, it's long, it's slow, but it's deliberate, right? So if you're in a crisis moment, this is not it. Like if it's a real emergency, the democratic leadership style is not going to rise to the occasion of the emergency. It's either going to make the emergency less urgent than we thought, or it's going to make it worse because we're going to keep talking. It's getting worse while we're still talking. So that's where some of those other styles could be helpful. The other two are fun. We all like those, and they're aspirational in some ways. But pace setting, it's about just alignment, right? Being like truly in alignment, ensuring that the group, the decisions that are made, the process that we're going through, the outcomes, the throughput, everything is in alignment. This is about walking the walk, talking the talk, all of that. And so there's a high level of accountability that's called for the people, the process, and for products, if you will, or for production that comes out here. Now, if you're doing a visioning process, if you're doing a overhaul of your rules, you're doing nominations work, what else? A building project maybe, or some sort of community partnership. You're exploring bringing in, a nonprofit to occupy space in the church or develop a partnership with the church. This is a type of leader that would serve you well, or this leadership style. I won't say this type of leader, but this leadership style will serve you well to get all that. Coaching, leadership, this is a newer designation because coaching is taking on its own world, taking up its own space. And it's a part of leadership, but it's its own field too, but it's a style of leadership. It's based on building relationship and building capacity of those involved. It's not about telling, it's not about directing, it's not counseling, it's not therapy. It starts with this belief that you have within you what you need to take the next faithful steps. And this coaching leadership style reaches in to try to pull that out, to help you pull that out and then move into whatever that is, right? These are great when the congregation or the committee is stuck, and there may be multiple right or good options that you're weighing. Because sometimes the conflict comes not because somebody's trying to do something bad. It's just we've either equalized all the options or we've tried to create some sort of hierarchy between two or more good options, right? And so we're trying to make one bad, but we're not really sure how to do that. And when we can't make the idea bad, then the next best option is to make the person bad, the person who's bringing it up bad. And then the conflict then becomes interpersonal, right? So there's a place for the coaching style when you're stuck or when you're at the height of your success or productivity, or you can see that you're about to accomplish your goal. The coaching leadership style is great in that it can then pull out of you those next faithful steps that you can take so that you don't plateau, right? So it's while you're growing, oftentimes we accomplish the thing and then we say, well, now let's figure out what the next thing is. No, 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 no. Life cycles teach us that before we get to the top of the curve, we have to already do that next thing, right? Because once we get to the top of the curve, we've already started down the backside of the curve, right? So on our way up, that's where this coaching leadership style can be great to engage because it'll pull out of us what we need for our next our next faithful steps that we want or need to take, right? So those are, the 6 on the Goldman style. Again, there are so many more. All these gets parsed out into 1,000 different ways. But there are continuums where you can see the 4 primary styles. Like most of the leadership, literature will land on these 4 basic styles, and then they kind of branch out from there, and they're on a continuum. There's not a good end or a bad end. Hopefully what we've demonstrated in these last 5 minutes is that there's space for all styles. And sometimes, though my default style is democratic, just given the spaces that I have occupied and do occupy, I have to call on any number of these, throughout any given day, right? When I'm in a cabinet meeting and we're talking about appointments, much of that process is I use a democratic style where we all talking, but there's a certain point in the conversation where everybody turns and looks in my direction and says, it's your appointment to make. I have to be reminded of that every time, every time. It's your appointment to make, right? We're all in agreement, but ultimately it's my decision to make, right? And there have been times where I've just had to say, yeah, I'm not budging on this one. Like I hear y'all, but my spirit and my gut says, nope, we're not doing that. Or, yep, we're going to do this, right? So there are moments where, you just have to call on different styles, right? It happens. And, I'm sorry. Let's reflect on that. Any thoughts about that? Any revelations come to mind as you think about your leadership style as we rip through that? Anything you wish to share that comes to mind?
I think it's hard when we are out of the norm. Like I'm a Democratic and I can see transformative. But when it comes time in leadership, sometimes you have to do the authoritative one and say, this is what we have to do. It's hard.
Mhm.
And so, but you have to handle it with grace. And it's not offering an apology, but I think it's how you handle it. We had a situation with the World Methodist Council and where some inappropriate behavior was taking place, and I had to call it out, but I did it in such a way that a few people on break came up to me and said, I like how you handled that you did not make the person that was doing the inappropriate manner feel less than in the room. So it even though you want to take care of it, but I think when you have to be in a space with a person for 2 or 3 years serving on a committee, you have to be very delicate in how you handle that. But it comes a time where you do have to be out of the norm to make sure things are handled correctly and handled with integrity.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and part of it, I didn't show you this earlier, but this seems like a place to bring it back in. It's in the PowerPoint, but let me just point it out because part of what you're naming, Dr. Yvette, and what may be roaming around in some of your minds is like, how do I know? Like what style? It's not like you're going to pause and say, okay, now I need to be authoritative. What did that look like? What did that mean? Or, oh, wait a minute, I should probably, that's not how it works. You just it's like water flowing down a stream. It goes where it needs to go. Your leadership knows what it needs to do. You just keep leading and it will adjust, as you go. But these are iterations here of what leading can look like throughout your life, throughout your organization, throughout your day. You may find, as a leader, you may find yourself counseling, offering some form of therapy, though you need to tell people you are not licensed or, qualified to provide, do the disclaimer there. You may engage in some training, some teaching, some mentoring, some consulting, coaching throughout the day, and various styles, are called upon for you to embody these depending on the context or the client or the group or the project or the outcomes or objectives that you have before you. So just know that throughout your this leading enterprise that we're all a part of, that it shows up in a variety of ways, right? And again, we don't stop and say, okay, now I'm counseling. Okay, now I'm training. No, like you're living like in being asked to provide leadership for this session. Throughout this time, I've done several of these, right? Just in our interactions. But did I pause and say, okay, now Dr. Yvette and I just had this exchange, so now let me shift to teaching, or let me do some mentoring right here, right? No, you're just engaging, right? Acknowledging that there are a number of ways to interact and to lead. Like your leadership shows up in a variety of ways. And one of the other gifts that we have in our leadership tool bag, if you will, is how we deal with conflict. And I try to include this in as many public engagements as many as I possibly can, because it's something that most of us are afraid of. Conflict is something many are afraid of. And even if we're not afraid of it, don't engage it well. And so even if you teach whether you teach a Sunday school class, you're doing a soup kitchen or a vacation Bible school lesson, spending time talking about how to engage conflict well will help you and all those there assembled. You cannot do this too much. So whatever you're doing, this, talking about this, talking about how people engage conflict is helpful. If you are a part of a team, it behooves you to know how those on your team deal with conflict or how they view conflict. Because sometimes the difference in how we view conflict or engage conflict becomes the conflict. And it's not the actual subject matter at hand that's the conflict. It's how we're seeing one another show up based on our conflict engagement style. Yeah. Now I'm a big time compromiser. I'm a big time compromiser, and problem solver is always a close second. Always. Sometimes they have shifted, but compromiser is always now I'm a middle child, so I came out of the womb, ready to roll. You too, Dr. Vince. I came out of the womb with this little orange box, already on my forehead. It's probably on my birth certificate. In fact, this is probably the color of my birth certificate, so I showed up in the world ready to go. But just as you think about, were there any other compromisers in the group? Just me? Oh, all right. Thank you, Dr. Martha. Thank you. Thank you. See, we're helping the world. We're helping the world. We'd like to teach the world to sing. Perfect.
Bishop Cedrick, Marie was 100% compromiser. She was the only one that was 100% of one thing.
Wow. I have never seen that.
Yeah.
It was very surprising to me.
I've never seen, I think mine's like 92, but I've never seen 100. Wow. Well, just to kind of reflect on this, based on where you sit or where you landed today, again, if you do this over and over again, you may see some shifts, but not a lot. Now, I've been on this instrument for about a decade, and it's compromiser and problem solver. And just like the leadership styles, there's a whole school of thought out there, so you can go as deeply into this as you care to. This is just a quick, easy instrument. If you're doing a retreat with somebody, this is a quick thing. You can have people take out their phones and do it, right? And you can know from the beginning how you need to engage with one another. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Just want to debrief this a little bit. How could you use this in your leadership? Whether this being the instrument or the knowledge that could come from it, how could you use it in your leadership?
I come from a business world, but one of the things that I always did when I had a conflict was the first question I ask is this a system problem or is this a personal problem? And that really helps to break down these 5 pieces. You may not have to deal with a conflict with a person. You might have to say, oh my gosh, that system doesn't work. Let's see how we can make that happen. Sometimes you have to say it is a person, and then you have to deal with them with whatever style you have. But that has always served me well because it's really easy to jump at the person. When you stop and think, it's like, no, you set them up for failure because of the way you set up your system.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Systems produce what they're designed to produce, right? So they don't produce what we want them to. They produce what they're designed to produce. Yeah, good. Other thoughts about how this knowledge or this instrument might be helpful to you in your leadership?
I took it from where I am now, where I work. And so I will, my leading one was an avoider because we're going through growing pains with new staff roles, new positions and things. So when I said the avoider, sometimes it's just best that I say nothing because I don't think it'll make it better. But I think I might lean more towards into the compromise and speak up just a little bit more, but not in a way that makes people feel they're being corrected.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, see, and that's interesting. I mean, I have the most experience with you, Dr. Yvette, than anybody else around. See, I would have just looking at it, see, this is how you can't judge people. You got to get to know people, right? So I would have just said, yeah, Dr. Yvette, that's problem solver, maybe accommodator on a good day. I mean, so, but again, it's situational, right?
Right.
So Dr. Yvette
So
is his name, right? So it's
if it
some.
was any other, I think I answered this all based on where I currently work.
Mhm.
In another setting, it would have been totally different. As
Right.
national president, totally different. But in the setting where I am currently working, it is what it is.
Yeah, it is
It
what
is
it
what
is.
it is.
Yeah. So again, this is just, it's an instrument, right? It's not, nobody's going to put this on your driver's license or your passport so that all the world knows. This is just information. So let me talk to you about a couple things and then pause because we'll be at time in a little bit here. As we started out, I said we had more than enough to fill our time. But a couple of the resources that you have, they are yours to use at your discretion. I just ask that the leadership genealogies piece that um, use it, but credit the creator of it for a minute, and then after that, you will have tweaked it enough for it to be your own. But I would invite you to spend some time with it and thinking about your own leadership and what you learned, what your family, your church, what you learned out in the world about leadership. What did these institutions or formative experiences teach you about leadership? So, what did you learn about leadership from each of these? And then the harder part of it is what have you had to unlearn from those institutions or experiences, right? And that doesn't make them bad. Life just happened. Life changed. You grew. They shifted. They came up with a different mission, or the family got more people in it, or it divided, or whatever happened, happened. But what have you had to unlearn? Because sometimes I think we think we still believe things that we don't. It's just things we once knew, right? So what have you had to unlearn in your leadership as well? And the second piece here is the I am from. That's just a fun exercise that I picked up along the way. If you're leading a group, it's a great opener for people to introduce themselves into the space, to share who they are, where they are truly from. It's you don't do this with people that you're never going to engage with again. Let me offer that. You want to do it with people you're going to be in ongoing relationship with so that you can continue to go deep and draw on the connections that you make with those that you're called to be in ministry with. Um, so with that, let me just do the reflection and then just if you could name quickly um, any takeaways. That means things that you are keeping, that you want to hold on to and continue to wrestle with for a season. Giveaways, those are things that you're taking with you that you will share with others, and then maybe a layaway or two. I think we're all of layaway generation, right? Some sort of layaway that we're gonna leave it behind for another season. And I put it that way because a lot of what we put on layaway never made it home. Yeah, so that's how I remember layaway. And you can choose one or more of these to share as your reflection, but you got to do it quick though. So why don't we start with Dr. Martha? We'll start with you again. I started with you at the beginning. I'll start with you at the end, and if we'll use mutual invitation to move us around, and we're not asking for dissertations here, just a quick reflection from each one. Thank you, Dr. Martha.
It's been a long time since I have spent time trying to figure out who those three principal people were. And I know that has changed over the years and will continue to change. And I think part of my focus in leadership is to take the best of those qualities and use them so that I'm empowering somebody else to become a leader. And I feel like I've been able to do that. And I'm of an age where I'm doing more looking forward than looking back.
Mm-hmm.
To, I need to make sure that I am, as they say, reaching down the ladder and pulling someone up behind me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And who would you invite to share?
Because this is the first time I've met her, I'm going to invite Deborah. Oh, but it looks like she froze again.
And Deborah's frozen. Oh, okay.
Can you hear me, Deborah?
Yes, I can.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you. I hope I don't break up again. I have this, you all are so dear. I've appreciated listening to the leaders of the church. My experience with the leaders of the church is very negative, involved a lot of church bite. And so it's encouraging to me. Oh, dear Martha, you are so sweet. It's encouraging to me to hear leaders that are trying to think about the ways to improve their leadership style, to develop their leaders without an ulterior motive. So thank you for being on this production. Thank you. Thank you for doing this for us.
Great. Thank you. Would you invite someone to share it, Deborah? Okay, Janice, how about you?
Well, my takeaway is where I am today as a leader, which I am Democratic, which I kind of knew anyway. My giveaway is that I want to empower others, teach others, motivate others. And my layaway is I haven't thought about it. It has something to do with conflict, but how to deal with it easily.
Yeah, thank you. And who would you invite to share, Janice?
I'll invite Dr. Yvette.
Thank you. Taking away everything. So I think taking away Dare to Lead. We'll be ordering that book as soon as we get off here. The other is the three leaders. I've never really thought about that, but that has my mind really racing in terms of how to live into what legacy my two grandmothers and my mother actually left me, and build on that and be more in tune to that. And what I'm going to put on layaway and not really leave behind, but leave it in the sense of not allowing it to hinder me, and that is conflict. Mm-hmm. And Miss Marie, if you will share.
Thank you, Dr. Yvette. I feel like the biggest takeaway for me, everything has been so rich and so helpful in looking at our own personal leadership. But as I think about the two assessments, the leadership assessment and the conflict assessment, it reminds me not only to look at myself, look inward more, but also to be more sensitive to my surroundings, reading the room, to determine what part of my leadership style or conflict style should I be leaning more into in a certain setting. So this has been helpful for me to be more aware of that and think that through in advance. And also, just like several others, thinking about the three people who have invested in me and helped me to become who I am, and being aware of that, and I'd like to chew on that a little bit more. And why is it that those three people had the impact they did? Mm-hmm. And then to turn around and also do that for someone else.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, then there we are. So, and we're right at time. So I will pause there and say thank you again to the Bishop Bruce O. Innovation Center for your invitation, Dr. Yvette for your leadership, and for Marie for your leadership and support, and getting us here, and for the whole team in the background that's doing the voodoo that you do that makes all this possible. Thank you for that. And God bless you all as you go about your day, leading well and doing what God has called you to do. Be well as you go.
Yes. Well, thank you everyone for attending our second webinar for laity leadership. We will have our next one that will be later this year, and it will be Deaconess Claire Esther talking about being involved in the community and being engaged in the community. She is a civil rights activist. If you don't know, she was on the balcony when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. She was actually the first individual to reach Dr. King, and she's going to be sharing about taking your passion and putting it into action. And so we look forward to having that at the end of September. And so we will have the information and the link will be coming out. Please share that with everyone. And then our last one will be on December the 14th, which we will have Aaron Hawkins that will be talking about leadership and involved in being a leader in your own community. And in that context, she's the former General Secretary for Race and Religion and has been a woman that has sat at many tables as the only woman of color, but now is expanding, and she's back in the West Coast and serving in that capacity. So we're grateful to Bishop Cedrick of giving his time and talent and energy today and his resources, very busy with 3 annual conferences, but found time to carve out to provide insight and help us be equipped as leaders in personal leadership. Is very important on how do you make yourself better to serve the kingdom of God. So Bishop Cedrick, we are grateful to you and your many talents and resources that you provided today. In the chat, he provided resources, but also afterwards, Marie will be sending out a link where you can go back and also the resources. And we do want to pause and thank behind the green curtain, the Wiz, Mike, who's behind there, who is running the technology for us today. Mike, we are so grateful for your engagement and your partnership and your contribution that we will be able to bring this not only today, but it will be in the dashboard in the digital library at the Bruce O. Innovation Center. So to Marie and Dr. Sue Kibbe, once again, thank you for your partnership. And now I'll turn it over to Marie for final words, and everybody wishing you a happy rest of the summer. Stay hydrated. It's hot here in Kansas City, but please, please remember any recommendations, any thoughts that you would like to see on our Laity Leadership Institute, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and provide that information. With that, God bless, and I'll turn it over to Marie at this time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yvette, and also Bishop Cedrick. On behalf of the Innovation Center, it has been an absolute joy and pleasure to have both of you today. I will be sending the webinar recording next week for everyone to access, along with the PDF handout and the assessments. I'll share those links once again, so everyone viewing the recording in the future can have a full benefit of those. So I will send that out, so watch your inbox. As Dr. Yvette shared, we have the next BMCR webinars coming up on September 14 and on December 14. So we hope to see you there as well. And with that, peace and blessings to all. Thank you so much.